All right, I see one person joined. And now they've left. I'm going to get started in just a minute. This is Ciraltos Live, my second live stream. Just waiting for a couple more people to join. Hey, Adam. Hello. All right, we got a couple people on. Thanks everyone for joining. This is my second live stream. Last time I did this, I forgot to announce that this was a live stream. Oh, my mic is low. Is this better? I'll turn it up. I'm trying not to get too much feedback in there. Last time I forgot to mention. It looks like I'm having some problems, but I put this is still a test in my feed, so I apologize if there's any issues. That is the live streaming equivalent of I'm new, so hopefully we can just work through these. Thanks everyone for your feedback from last time. Like I said, I'm still experimenting with this. It's definitely different from pre-recorded videos. I can't really cut out anything. I'm not sure of the cadence that I'll be doing these going forward, but I did register the domain name Ciraltos Live, so I'm kind of committed to it, and I created the graphics. So, funny story, somebody reported an issue of choppiness at the end of the last one. So I upgraded a 10-plus-year-old router that I had that I knew the Wi-Fi broke in a long time ago with a Ubiquiti security gateway. And as I was pulling it out, I realized that there was a Cat5 cable that only had 2 twisted pairs. So it's not a Cat5e, so it would have never went over 100 megs. All right, so I'm going to start out with a couple announcements. Excuse me. I am happy to announce that I will be presenting at the first US Windows Virtual Desktop User Group on Friday, August 7th. I have a link in the comments, so if you're interested in joining, please do. I'm going to go over a kind of a basic from the beginning with Windows Virtual Desktop, an overview, and then walk through deploying it. I suspect, although it's a US Windows Virtual Desktop User Group, I suspect that link will work outside the US. Speaking of Windows Virtual Desktop, the spring update went GA this last week, so that's great news. All my content now, or actually the last few videos, has been with the spring update, because it's such a major change and for the better. I created a course a few months ago on ACloud.guru.com. It was about connecting Windows AD to Azure AD and using things like password hash synchronization, password authentication, and all those related topics. Due to the Linux Academy merger with ACloud.guru, content was consolidated, and my content is going to be pulled because it just duplicates with some other stuff. No problem with it. It was just a duplication, and they're streamlining their catalog. Anyway, the reason I'm saying this is it will be available until mid-August is what I heard. So if you have a ACloud.guru subscription and you're interested, I included a link below. I think they also have a free trial for a week, so if you're interested in checking that out, get it while the getting's good, because it's not going to be around much longer. I'm going to just check what's going on here. Okay. I'm not sure why it says that my stream's unhealthy, but hopefully this is all coming through okay. And again, I apologize if it isn't. So what the focus of this is this this week or this event is a question that I got a couple weeks ago from somebody. The question was, what's the easiest way to become an expert in Microsoft Azure? And I've really been pondering that because when I first heard it, I thought, well, there is no easy way. But then I really contemplated that question for a while and thought of how daunting it would be to start out today, because things in the cloud move so fast, I really can't even keep up with most of it. It's a big subject. There's lots of different categories in Azure, just in general, and it becomes overwhelming sometimes with the amount of information that comes out. For example, log analytics and Windows Virtual Desktop, that's something I'm just barely starting into. So somebody asked about the Windows Virtual Desktop group. It's, I'm covering, it's like squirrel, sorry. I'm covering, it's like an introduction to Windows Virtual Desktop Spring Update. Okay, back to it. It's overwhelming sometimes with all the content. I'm just starting with Windows Virtual Desktop and Log Analytics. Azure Files for Windows AD support came GA here a couple weeks ago, and I totally missed it. So really, it comes down to, what are those things, though, that the basic things that somebody just starting out in IT would want to tackle if they're looking to go to the cloud. And funny enough, it's very basic stuff that I've come up with. And I really think it's important to get a good foundation when starting out. It doesn't matter if it's ops, dev, or DevOps, because they're all kind of blending together now. And I've got some categories. The basic networking is the first. I think it's really important, no matter what area you're focusing on, to have a good understanding of subnetting, routing, DNS, DHCP. There are a few different certifications around this that are available. Going back to the what I posted last couple weeks ago around using certification as a template or a way of structured learning. The CompTIA Network Plus is a good option. I haven't actually taken that, but looking at the objectives, it looks like a really good vendor agnostic certification. Then there's the Cisco CCNA. That's been around for a long time, and I took that many, many years ago. It was actually one of the hardest certification tests I took, primarily because I took the beta exam, which threw all questions. I know it was over 100, which was pretty intense. Anyway, that covers a lot of the basics and then some more advanced topics, but it is vendor specific. And then the Microsoft Networking Fundamentals, I didn't even realize I had one, but when I looked at the objectives for that, it looked pretty dated. But as I thought about it, this content is dated. Routing and switching has been around for a long time. It really hasn't changed much. Some of the specifics have, but it functions the same way. The same with DNS. I mean, that's the same primarily with some added features, but it works the same. So saying it's dated isn't really fair. So the CompTIA Network Plus or the Microsoft Plus, I think, would be a good direction starting out. If you really like infrastructure and plan on doing a lot of on-premises networking, then the CCNA is probably a really good option. I do think if you hit YouTube for a couple weekends and go over those topics, you could probably find a lot of material out there that go over the basics and get a good foundation on that. So moving on to OSs. So getting a good foundation on Windows, I think, is important. Microsoft, the certification paths really look like they're going towards Azure, but I think Windows and Active Directory are pretty well embedded in organizations, and it's going to be for a while. So server management, Windows AD, getting some basics on that so you can navigate around, address setting up users. Some group policy stuff is going to be very helpful. And there's plenty of certification and training on that. The other one is Linux, and this is interesting because This is really my blind spot when it comes to an OS. I have used it in the past. I normally fumble my way through it, but right now over 50% of the servers, is the statistic I heard, running in Azure are running Linux. So definitely it's not a one or the other anymore. I think it's really both. You should have a good foundation on both of these. There is options available from CompTIA for the network or Linux Plus, and then there's also another certification from the Linux Professional Institute. I can't really speak to either of those specifically, but they look like they've got probably a good starting point for anybody who wants to learn. And then there's also the vendor specific like Oracle and Red Hat. Linux is important because of the huge impact that like Docker and Kubernetes is having on the industry. You should be comfortable remoting into a shell and using a text editor to modify settings, mounting drives, and setting permissions. Definitely both are important, will add to marketable skills. The third in my suggestions for somebody just starting out is scripting. Don't cut yourself short on this. I regret not learning scripting early on. I really held off for a long time. I've got 3 down here. The 2 big ones are PowerShell and Python. JavaScript is another one. I can't really speak much to JavaScript, but I do think no matter what you learn, it's going to be beneficial. So I learned the most with PowerShell by learning Python. So what I mean by that is I think it was the Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. I started working through that book, and I got about halfway. And then I just dawned on me that I'm a Windows admin. I should probably learn, put the effort into PowerShell. And when I did that jump over, it actually, a lot of what I learned from Python translated very well into PowerShell, just with variables and data types and all that stuff, and the looping functions and stuff. It all kind of translated well. So point being is if you learn one, another one's going to come natural, I think. So either one of them, obviously if you're more focused on the Windows, PowerShell seems to be the way to go. And if you're focused on Linux, Python is probably the better option. I don't know of any PowerShell certs. I'm sure somebody out there probably has one available. It looks like there's a couple for Python, but I really think just learning this, I learned PowerShell with a Month of Lunches book. That was a great starting point. And then instead of a certification, write some scripts, create some stuff, and put it on GitHub and use that as a reference. Speaking of that, I have a presentation I plan to give at some PowerShell user groups called Git for the Lone Scripter. Those aren't happening. The user groups aren't, at least not live ones or in-person ones. So for the next live event, I'm considering giving that. It covers some of the basics of using Git for people, teams of one, basically. So they originated because I was using Dropbox or something, and it got blocked. So I had to find another way of keeping a centralized repository of my scripts. And that's where I got into GitHub. And I had to spend some time figuring out how to get my content out there, how to pull it down on a different computer. So it's just going over that. What I've found with the PowerShell community is there seems to be 2 groups. There's the people who maybe have never really heard of Git, or they've probably heard of it, but never really used Git, and or maybe have used it a little bit but don't have a good understanding of it. And then there's developers who also do PowerShell who are in it all the time. This is not meant for those. It's meant for people just starting out. There's a lot of advantages that Git has over just a file share, and that's what I go over. So that will be coming in a couple weeks. Let's see. That is the list of my suggestions for somebody just starting out in IT. I didn't cover anything on Azure. That I kind of went over that last week as far as certifications and stuff. But I do want to give a shout out to Tech Trainer Tim. If you're planning on taking the AZ900, he has a series on YouTube that's really, really complete. So if you're not familiar with his work, he's a Pluralsight author, and he just has tons of great content out there. So take a look at that. It's techtrainertim.com is his website, and you can get access to anything there. So is there any questions? Because I can wrap up here if I don't have any. I think thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again here in a couple weeks. Let's see, I'll plan to do that on the 13th. Don't forget about the US Windows Virtual Desktop User Group on the 7th, and then check out my course on Azure AD Hybrid Identities at ACloud.guru. Details for both of those are below. Thanks for watching, everyone.